everybody. It's me, a vessel of contempt and hatred. This is where we're at today. To summarize, in our prior adventure last time on Freeland Gets Her Asshole Blown Out, last time on that show, we had many complications with Skelebeasts. They were not pleased to see us. So, make no bones about it. No. Make no bones about it. I locked my health. I killed everything on the way here in a moment of catharsis. Even the younglings. Yes, I even killed the younglings. Well, you can't permanently kill them. I think they respawn indefinitely, but I killed my fair share of them. There is still one more item that I need to get down there, but I wanted to cover this first. I'm going to drop down here with Nito, and I have intentionally avoided sexy times. Like, we're not doing sexy times today. I'm actually going for defense. I've tried to set myself up for Nito. A couple things to mention. I did some testing on enemies to see exactly what the mod is doing to them. And I don't know about their damage values. I've gone over this before, but they're probably doing something like an extra 50, 75% or something damage. Maybe twice, I don't know. Their health values, though, are inflated by at least 2 times. Like an extra 100%. Because I did some testing of basic enemies. Not the Gravelords. Like, the Gravelords are even worse. Actually, I didn't even have the Gravelord mod turned on whenever I did this. So they could have even more health, I guess. I think Gravelords might have an extra 20% health. I can't remember. But even without any mods turned on in relationship to that... get out of here, sweet babies. Even with... Wait, what? Where'd it go? Oh, it's over here. Even without that turned on... Really? Well, that was a waste of time. So long, sweet babies. Even without that turned on, I did some testing on the basic pinwheel enemies in here, and those guys had about 1,200 health. And they're supposed to have about 507, I think, is the listed number that they're supposed to have. So yeah, they have quite a substantial amount of health. Oh, you sweet little angels. Sweet, precious babies. Sweet, delicious babies. I really appreciate the fact that they managed to get these little tiny skeletons in here. I know in the past they've had to... Many video games have been like this. They've had to change enemies that are like this because they're too childlike. I don't know how they managed to get it in here. Like, usually people throw fits about this. But I really appreciate the fact that they are here. From a storytelling standpoint. Anyways, Nito. Nito then probably has about 8,500 health. So I probably need, like, if this weapon hitting for 1,000 damage, which it doesn't, then I would need to hit him at least 9 times to be able to kill him. So it's needless to say, it's gonna take a while. Someone did mention in the comment section, divine weapons might be able to get rid of his skeletons. I was avoiding doing that, one, because whenever I, like, remember in the prior episode, I didn't even know where I was going to go, so I didn't have time to prepare. The only divine weapon I had was a basic club. So I made one here, because why the hell not? But a problem is that if he kills his own skeletons, which he does quite often, then they will resurrect regardless of whatever you do. Plus, the fact that the aggression mod is kicked in. Like, some people were saying de-equip the Sunlight Maggot because that attracts them. And I'm going over this because if you were with us in the last episode, you know how fucking complicated this got. The aggression mod is going to ensure that they attack you no matter what. So having the Sunlight Maggot on or off is not going to matter one way or the other. The only way around that would be if we take it off and we also put the Ring of Fog on. But even then, that would just set it to the base level of what the game actually normally is. And even then, usually the skeletons will see you. It's kind of just random. So, just a lot of complications just to say the best way of doing this is just to face fuck it, unfortunately. So, my plan is to go in there, do what I was doing last time, try to run around in circles, get the skeletons to chase me around, and maybe try to pick those guys off. And maybe the Divine Club will work. I don't know if his AoE will actually revive them or some other nonsense like that. I don't know. Oh, by the way, I also raised my level some more. But the only thing that I increased from the last part is my resistance. Which doesn't actually do anything. I just did it just because I'm such a cutie. I'm a cutie, so I did that. Actually, I just thought it'd be funny. I think it might have actually given me... It mainly gives you just, like, generic resistances, like poison or something. But it might have given me, like, an extra 10 or 15 physical defense or something. Resistance sucks. It sucks a lot. But anyways, point being, if I fail in this attempt, I'm just going to fast forward. Because I don't want this to be the episode. But that does lead into a topic of discussion that I actually do want to talk about. This is going to be sort of a more me talking about things I was thinking about episode. You guys didn't really say much. You just kind of mainly just talk about Monster Hunter, unfortunately. Which is kind of more my fault. Something that I do want to mention is that whenever I have these topics of discussion, like last time I wanted to talk about like my idea for having like recharge abilities and things like that in the game. And I kind of realized over time, if I'm going to talk about stuff like that, it should be at the front of the episode. Because over time, I get so... Like, I have this weird mixture of being very angry at the game, but also kind of being bemused by it at the same time. But it kind of drives me crazy to the point where I can't talk coherently. And the fact that I'm angry is translating into whatever I'm talking... Like, that's what happened last time. I was so fucking angry at the constant skeleton barrage that I just started, like... I think I started shitting on Monster Hunter or something? I can't remember, but you guys were very angry about something. And I can't remember what exactly it was that I said. But point being, if I'm going to talk coherently about anything... God, he has such skinny bitch legs. But it almost looks like he has a big skeleton beard. It was more of a skeleton poncho. Like, you can really see it because of the red. He has a big skeleton poncho. Racist. Well, maybe, to be fair, he might be like he might be Mexican. There's no way of knowing, to be sure. Mexican Gravelord. God, look how much health I lost from that. Alright, point being, if this doesn't work out, I'll just fast forward until he actually is dead. Alright, let's run some tests. Oh, it actually kills him one hit. No. Move away from that. Okay. That might have killed them. Aw, fuck it. Really? So you actually do have to be moving constantly. There we go, okay. That's the secret, just spam roll all the time. And it'll be just fine. Okay, surely there's more than that. Were there really only like 4 skeletons down here? But it felt like there's thousands of them. Okay, here we go. God damn it. That's not particularly fun. Oh, God. Even now, this is still really bad. No! Oh my God, really? That's how it goes out. I even made sure that I stacked as much poise as I possibly could. I'll tell you, I'll give you guys one run back. We'll try one run back. Which is to say, I will just demonstrate to you what happened last time during the Adventures of Freela during the last part, in case you missed it. Which is to say, I will make no progress whatsoever. Behold! Oh. I forgot where to go. Alright, 2 more run backs. I'll at least demonstrate one that is almost competent. I couldn't remember where to go. Well, fine, pick it up. Pick it up. Pick up my... No, don't sit down. Don't sit down. Oh, I can tell this is already going bad. This is already bad news town for Freeland. And notice this guy... Oh, no. The last time I did my... Jesus Christ! Look at all that damage. Okay, you guys get the idea. This is what we were dealing with last time. This is what I'm going to have to continue to deal with. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to fast forward from here. So I will see you guys in a bit, I guess. And if I come back and I seem like I'm upset, you can probably understand why. So, see you then. Welcome back. It took a bit. That took a bit. It took a bit just because I was just because of the runbacks. Man, that last one, how I actually finally did it is I had to just bait everything out and kill everything that was up on top by luring them next to the bonfire, and then just dropping back down once they were cleared out after baiting the ones that were down there out of that area. I'll state the obvious. The later half of Dark Souls 1 kind of sucks ass. Sucks a lot of butt. It just presses its mouth right up to the butthole and just sucks whatever's in there out. It doesn't care. It doesn't give a shit. By the way, look how many... Oh, you can't see it here in this game, I forgot. I was gonna say, look how many souls you actually require in order to level up now, and it's... I forget what it is now, but it's absolutely monstrous. Well, I'm right here. What am I saying? Look. 1,211,691 for one level. That's why people... that's why people don't really, level up like crazy in Souls games. New Game Plus. New Game Plus. I don't partake in that, usually. Right now I'm basically fighting at the equivalent of probably New Game Plus 2, maybe? Plus 3, possibly? It depends. Like I said, I have no idea what everything is right now. Okay. By the way, Nito himself, like, even without the skeletons, he's not a particularly he's not a great boss. Like, he telegraphs his attacks, but he has that sort of Dark Souls 2-ism thing of he rears back, and his movements are very awkward, and you can't really tell when he's going to swing. You guys probably know exactly what I'm talking about. When they raise their arm way back, and it looks like, oh, he's going to swing, but then he doesn't, and it just stays there for a while. And it's just kind of a guessing game. You just have to end up memorizing it. It's just... Some people describe it as being artificial difficulty. I don't know if it's artificial difficulty, but... It's not super great. Like, I don't know what else to say about it, but it is not super great. Oh, because of the way that... Oh, okay. It was a ribcage. I actually thought it was like some sort of treasure or something for a second, because it was both purple and gold at the same time. Ooh, that doesn't look too good. Almost looks like some sort of techno-future spine. Anyways, enough of this area. I decided the next thing that I want to do, since we actually got the ring here, is to head down to New Londo. Which is going to be a mistake. But it's a mistake that I have to make eventually, so we may as well do it, right? Okay, hold on, let me focus for a moment. Oh, man. Oh, I'm still kind of worn out from that. By the way, I can tell in this episode my voice is going to go out, because I've been doing a lot of recording lately. And my voice is really dry today for some reason. So, if my voice does go out, that's what it is. Alright, but there are some topics to discuss today. Let's go to Large Club, why not? See how that is. I always like this move. That's what I always liked about it. It's a good PvP weapon. Not super great, but you know. The distinction between PvE and PvP might be a minor talking point today. See, I like it. I'm not going to focus too much on that, but it is sort of a lead-in. 3 guys. I've kind of memorized this. Come on, third one. You're probably going to do a jumping attack. Nope. Alright, whatever. It actually went through a shield. This one's... By the way, I was dealing 321 damage to Nito. With his... whatever I said. 8,500 health points. It took a while. It took a while. Alright. Oh, gosh. I feel so worn out now. I'm only 35. I shouldn't be feeling this way. Alright. Oh, God. But... the divine weapon did help quite a bit in that particular case. It's not super... By the way, I got the other mask by... Actually, I didn't get any repeats either, which was kind of weird. I got the, other 2 masks from killing those guys. One thing I've often said is that I don't mind if things are randomized as far as drops go, as long as... My preferred method is, sure, if the drops are random, that's fine. But if you've gotten something once before, you won't get it again. Like, that makes it perfectly fine to me. Like, even if the drop rate is something awful, like 2% or 5% or heaven forbid, 0.5%, like a fucking loot box in an MMO, then it's still fine as long as you don't get repeats. I'm kind of like that. Like, I can tolerate things if they're that way. Now, what was I doing? Oh yeah, I wanted to equip the full Elite Knight. Some people haven't seen this, the full Elite Cleric set. You can't really see it. God, the bloom and everything in this game. But you can't really see it. I've always liked the helmet on this. This is one of the sets in the game that are in the game. They're in the game files, but you can't get them without actually hacking them in. The other one is the Mage Smith set, I think it is. But you can't... But it looks pretty much the same as an ordinary set. It's just a little bit darker. This one actually is visually distinct. I do like the look of it. Especially the helmet, more specifically. You're really not supposed to look this way. You're supposed to look a lot fatter, but I'm using the mods to make Freeland sexy. So, there's a bit more funneling at the center than there normally would be, obviously. But I do generally like the look of it. Especially, I like the little bell-bottom things that it has going on there at the bottom. I think those are super cute. I like those, too. I don't know why it's not in the game. It does have abnormally high physical defense, but it seems like it is generally balanced for the amount of, like, defense and weight that it has. So I don't know why it's not in the game. It just isn't, for whatever reason. Oh, the other thing I want to mention is I turned in the 2 extra Firekeeper souls, and that's why my SS Flask is at +4 now. So, that's done. Wait, oh, I didn't sit down. Oh, God. Thank goodness, Brain. Good job, Brain. No problem. I'm here to help. I need to sit down, or else I would have respawned back there. Which, unfortunately, means I need to kill the Goon Squad again. Okay, but lead in from the Nito fight if I can recover. Alright, that is an example of utility. And that's something I want to talk about today. Something I want to get out of the way first is... Some people were discussing this sort of... I'm trying my best not to use my straw man voice today. I know it gets... The thing about a straw man voice, some people were saying, you use straw man, so you're so hypocritical, you're using straw man arguments. And I keep saying throughout the videos, I know, I'm doing that intentionally because I find it funny. Like, it's funny. To me. It's funny to me. Maybe not to you guys, but it is funny to me. And that's what's most important of all. So, don't take me super seriously all the time. I know it's hard to read me and exactly when I'm being serious and when I'm being hyperbolic because I'm amusing myself. Like, especially with the tail cut thing. Like, you guys got really upset about that, but part of it was me being serious and part of it was me being hyperbolic, obviously. But I do not like tail cuts in Dark Souls games. Like, the way that they are in this... Like, I think everyone can agree with that. You might like the idea or whatever, but to get off the subject of tail cuts... They are very bad in Dark Souls games. Like, they've never been implemented well. Like, you could implement them well, I guess, if you really set your mind to it, but I'm very glad that they are just not in the games anymore. They were only one, they were not a welcome addition, they were added in with no real thought behind them, and I think they recognize that. That's probably the reason why they're not in the games anymore. Let's see. Do I have any transient curses yet? Oof. It's a good thing that the monster drops themselves don't change. If that wasn't the case, we'd have a hard time getting through this area, since the ghosts wouldn't be dropping transient curses. Alright. But yeah, just say that, get that out of the way. I might, if I have time, I might talk a little bit more about that, but it's not really important. Like I said, I need to focus more on actually getting the things I want to talk about seriously out of the way first. Or else it's just going to devolve into nonsense as I enrage myself going into this area specifically. Okay. Some people were discussing the idea of elements. Elements on, like, damage elements on weapons and so forth and so on. Because I was talking about specifically, like, the modifiers that you put on weapon as far as, like, making them divine, making them fire-based or whatever. And how that's kind of a boring system, and I've never really liked it in the Souls games. Some people do like it. One person, and I'm gonna, like, not gonna name names, that makes it sound bad, but I didn't write it down, in other words, suggested make the elements more prominent. That is to say, it's more important, like, if you find something that has extremely, like, say this hollow had extremely high like physical defense or something, so you would need an element to get past it. Or you were using a fire weapon, and he has extremely high fire defense, so you have to switch to an ice weapon, or whatever it happens to be. I do know that I can't remember its name, but I know that there's a game in development right now in which that is the case. You guys would probably know better than I would, actually. Where you have to use very specific elemental attacks, or like a red attack versus a blue attack, and so on. Or else it simply doesn't work. Like, you can't actually hit the enemies. And in the case of that game, I only know this because I asked and I thought about it when I was writing my notes. And I was going to chill here and wait for them to come to me. In the case of that game, it seems like it's actually very easy to switch between attack types. So it's not that bad, supposedly. But usually that's my complaint, my major complaint, other than it being kind of a boring, mundane system that... My main complaint with elemental systems is that it's not really true gameplay. It's just the illusion of depth by forcing you... Ooh, wow! Gravelord versions of these things. Ooh. It creates the illusion of depth where otherwise there would not be any. You're still attacking everything the exact same way you normally would have. It's just that sometimes your attacks just might not work. It just kind of depends. And like, that's the idea. I'm not saying it's a horrible, horrible system or anything, but it isn't that complex of a integration, is my main point. That does create a rock, paper, scissors problem. And I wanted to give that first example as a... I wanted to state that as a... Ooh. I wanted to state that as a first example. To say it can work, but it has to be fast. Like, you have to be able to switch between things fast. Because if you were playing Souls... Like, I think this suggestion is not a particularly good one for Souls, obviously. Because if it was a Souls game... God, you assholes are just gonna wait. It looks so big. If that wasn't the case in a Souls game, if you came across these ghosts and they were fire ghosts, they're red already, so... And I was using a fire weapon, and it didn't work. Then I would have to go into my menu, or I would have to have a secondary weapon equipped, maybe even 3 of them, I don't know. And, like, switch to my other weapon that would allow me to actually hit them. And I would just have to do that for every single enemy that changed its type. Like, you would just constantly be doing that, whether it's ice or fire. That's the most generic example. Whether it's that or whether it's something else, like dark versus light or whatever happens to be. Then you would still be doing that, and that would be the general gameplay. It would be the same thing that we're doing now, except just ever so often you would come across an enemy where you attack them and nothing happens, or it even heals them or something. So you have to go into your menu and you have to change to another weapon. And it would be basically that. Some people like that. I don't understand why. But some people do like that. I wanted to give that first example of that new game, whatever it is. I wish I had a better example, but that's the thing that came to mind whenever I was writing my notes. This might not be so bad if they just spawn from the ground. It's mainly going to be places like that thing over there. They don't see them moving. The aggression mod doesn't really affect them that much. This is so weird. It's going to be really bad whenever I get in here, though. Because all of them are going to spawn all of a sudden. Do they approach? Yes, they do approach. Okay. But that is one way of doing it. That's one example. I wish I had a better example, etc. So forth. Oh my god, come on, really? Sweeties. You know, just spawn all of them. There we go. Love how they spawn one behind you so you can't leave. The dick move. And no, don't wander away. There we go. Of course, they have long-range attacks. That is... By the way, the Skella Beast down there, and since I'm never going to mention it again, but objectively, those probably are the worst enemy in the game. Like, as far as design and everything goes. Like, this shit of not being able to hit these enemies without taking a hit because of the speed of my weapon and the speed of their attacks, that ain't cool. That's not cool. I don't like that. It's not like it's affecting me that much in this particular case, but I don't like that. That's not cool. Don't do that. I'm sure some people will do. Oh, people, for some reason, like to throw fits about every single thing that I say. Even if it's just something Even though I preface it by saying, well, there's nothing wrong with it necessarily, but I don't like it, people will still throw giant tantrums about it. I do not understand the reactions some people have. Anyways, I'm listening. That one game is one example of it doing it somewhat okay because that's just part of the core gameplay. You really have to design around it. Another example that I wanted to give, because I love this game otherwise, really... Oh, you fucking dick! Shooting your fucking lightning cum all over the place. Dickbag ghost. Knows I can't fly to attack her. So just sitting there spamming that shit. Oh! Oh my god, you fucking coward. I think that was that goddamn baby one, too. No, it wasn't. It would have screamed otherwise, probably. I don't know. Anyways, I wanted to mention Vagrant's story in this context. Yeah, I think... Yeah, it was the baby one, because she's not here. Unless she spawns. No, maybe not. Huh. Because Vagrant's story sort of does this. It doesn't do elemental, but in case you're not aware, Vagrant's story does have a system in which there are different types of enemies. Like ghosts, human-type enemies, dragon-type enemies, things like that. And if you hit these enemies long... Yeah, sure, pop. Fucking why not? If you hit, like, a dragon enemy with a weapon enough, that weapon will sort of memorize... I'm not sure what the logic of it is in that game. Like, there's like, fireflies and, like, magic that sort of works... It's sort of an ethereal way, so I guess that's sort of the... I don't know. But, if you hit that particular type of enemy enough, then it becomes more effective against an enemy. But it also loses its effectiveness against other enemies. So if you only use one weapon, like if this was the only weapon I used the entire game, and I used it against everything, it would be mediocre. Like, I actually did this in my first playthrough of Vagrant Story. This is sort of what made me appreciate it a little bit more. I came up against the final boss, and I just had a shitty weapon. Like, it was my favorite weapon, but it was just garbage as far as dealing damage to him. Because it just wasn't any good at anything. So, you didn't have to make it this bad. Like, you could have, like, 2 or 3 weapons, and that could be good enough. But the way I ended up doing it was I manufactured a weapon for every type. So I would have a weapon that I use exclusively for killing humans. I had a weapon that I used exclusively for killing dragons, and so forth and so on. And since dragons were big creatures, I wanted to make sure that that weapon was a spear in this case. But also, specific enemies have damage resistance types that they were good against. So, like, you might want to use a mace against skeletons and things like that. Those are things that you had to take in... Really? Are you fucking serious? Come on. Oh, right. Forgot to... I was sitting here thinking about it. I was actually thinking about... The viewers are going to get mad that I didn't use the transient curse, but I'm thinking about it right now, so it won't affect me. But then I got so distracted that I actually double forgot it. So I look extra stupid. So, that was how I got around it. Like, there was just different ways of dealing with the problem, and that's how I dealt with the problem. Could you guys please come through? Whatever, just fucking stay there, I don't care. So that ended up being... Oh, God. I really want to get rid of the ones here. I'm not sure how the aggro... Okay, here we go. Jesus. This is gonna be bad. If their attacks were not... If their attacks didn't reach so far, it wouldn't be that much of an issue. But I've just got to sit here and bait them out, because they're going to come through the fucking walls. And they're not going to be happy about it either. And since this is such a shitty little area, I'm going to have trouble trying to duck and weave and shit right here. Come on. Oh, the fucking range on their attacks is so irritating. Okay. Oh boy. It also does this shit, where sometimes they will die in an area that you can't reach their shit. But the problem in Vagrant Story was that you ended up having to do that. You had to, every single time that you came across a new... like, there would be rooms in which there was a human that had a guard dog, and it also there might have been, like, a ghost or something in there, or whatever. And the problem would be... Yeah, I know, you're angry. I'm angry too. We're all angry. And the problem would be that you would have to kill the human, switch to a different weapon, kill his dog, switch to yet another weapon, and then switch again to kill the remaining, like, phantom-type enemy or whatever it happened to be. Or maybe there would have been a dragon enemy or whatever. It just depends on the situation. And all that time that you spent in the menus, just going through and changing weapons again, like, it tacked on huge amounts of time. So that's an example of doing it wrong. Like, as much as Vagrant's Story got a lot of things right. And I generally sort of like that idea of it sort of gaining experience. That is kind of a neat concept. But it was too awkward. It was too awkward. It didn't really work in that game particularly well. Mainly because of all the menuing that you had to do in Vagrant Story, which was a common complaint with that game. It really was. That's where the garbage shit was. Come on. Come on! Hiding in the fucking walls. That's why I hate this area. And of course, if they die in the walls, then you can't do anything about their drops. Not that it really matters that much, but still. So that system did not really work too well, for that reason. I would consider it to be a failed system in that particular regard. So I would use that as a demonstration of that problem. That if you're going to have a rock, paper, scissors system, combine those two words. If you're going to have that system, which I don't really respect that system in the first place, like it's not horrendous or anything, but it's just lazy and it's not particularly interesting in the first place. Like RPGs do that a lot. Like ice enemy, you can't use ice magic. Oh no, I guess I'll use fire magic. If you're going to have that sort of lazy system that just sort of adds mediocre amounts of depth to a system, then it better be fast. Like, it better be something that you can adapt to quickly, or else it becomes that Vagrant Story problem of it just drags the whole gameplay down. Like, it's something you definitely want to avoid. So, I guess the bottom line for elemental things with me, if you just love elemental properties on your weapon for some reason, I have no idea why people would... like, at least two or maybe, well, probably like one or two people got really upset whenever I was talking about the gem system in Bloodborne and how it'd be more interesting if the gems had utility-based properties rather than just being generic damage properties. And some people got really upset about that for some reason. I think one person described it as he doesn't want weapons to be Swiss Army weapons that do everything. But in my mind, if you had a thing like that, then each weapon would probably only have like one slot that would change its property. Or maybe two at most. So, this is another talking point that I'll get into in a second. But anyways, I don't know, I just don't understand some people sometimes. It doesn't make any sense to me why people would want an elemental system versus a utility-based system. Unless they're just not thinking about the system too much, and they imagine each weapon being exactly like the example that I gave. And I think in Bloodborne you can have, like, I can't remember, like 3 or 4 different gem slots. So I can imagine people going, well then, they just do everything. Because they didn't think, and they didn't think, well, if you just had fewer slots. Like, they're not doing any work themselves. And they're just taking the example of... This is the reason why I ramble, because I want to make sure that I cover as much as possible. So if you get angry at me doing that, it's because of people that do that respond that way, that are just very literal and pedantic with their counter-arguments, and they don't think about the possible applications. They're just angry that you suggested it in the first place. And I just don't get along with people like that, and I can't really deal with them. But that's the source of most of my problems. But anyways, I'm sure people are angry about that. That's not even really a straw man. That's just how some people are. But anyways, if you really like that, the elemental thing, for whatever your reason that I don't understand, if you're in love with that, then that's something to consider, that if you're going to have elemental things, it should be something that you can switch very easily. Which actually, by the way, I don't mind... Like, I prefer Dark Souls to have just 2 weapon slots. Like, whenever you start having item slots where you just have millions of items, I really don't like that at all. Like you can tell, I very rarely fill these out. I usually only have 1, my Estus. Maybe 2. Because it gets very easy to get lost in this mess of menuing. and weapons are the same way, I don't want to have 4 weapons. Like, I know some people love the idea of having just shit tons of weapons on their inventory. Personally, I prefer 2. And the way that I would personally have it work would be your weight go in Dark Souls. Your weight goes by whatever your heaviest weapon is. But otherwise, like if you switch, so it doesn't count both of them. Like right now, I can't use 2 weapons. Well, I guess I could actually. I probably have fixed that by now because I think I'm using Havels at the moment actually. So I could probably put my dumb bow on here if I can find it. There we go. Does it affect my roll? It did. It did affect my roll. So this is a good example. It affected my roll, so I can't equip this. I have to take it off. Fast roll. So in my mind, what was the weight of that? 10. This is a weight of 11. So it would only go by 11. So if I equip something that had 15 weight in the slot, it would then go by 15 weight. And that would be my max weight. So even if you switch weapons, like some people have suggested this, so that, like, if you pull out, if you're using a knife or something in this hand, and then you switch to this, suddenly you get randomly heavier because you're using a heavier weapon. I would just say, just simplify it, make it go by the heaviest weapon no matter what you're using. So that's your build. Personally, that's how I would handle it, but anyways, that's a side tangent. Anyways, elemental weapons, make sure that it's fast if you're going to do that. I don't like elemental weapons. I prefer utility-based things, which is my next topic. But if you're going to have sort of a gym-type system, make sure that it's limited so that you don't have weapons that have 4 or 5 different kinds of utility behind them, because then that would be a problem. I guess I should have been even more long-winded and gone into that too last time. That's my mistake. I'll be sure to be more long-winded in the future, guys. How dare I? Anyways, hello.
Well, this is a surprise.
There you go.
Visitors, save for good.
Do the ghosts actually visit you?
The Lord Vessel. Very impressive. I know exactly what you're.
It amazes me that
You
I might be
seek
carrying
the
it with
4
me.
kings whom I guard over. This is the key to the seal.
Do I tell him that I've never understood. I'm gonna be a shithead on this one. Do I tell him that I have the Lord Vessel? Could I've just walked up and said, the Lord Vessel, I have it? And he'd be like, oh, really? And he just wouldn't believe me? Or am I physically carrying it with me everywhere I go, even though I already said it? Like, it's just a flag in the game, obviously. It's not supposed to be meant... You're not supposed to take it literally, but it's just funny that he says that, like, he can physically see that you have it. And it's this giant bowl. How do you even lug this thing around in the first place? I guess you're superhuman, but still, it's big. And you can't wear it on your back, and even if you're carrying it, then it's still super awkward. You would have to carry it with both hands because it physically is too big. It's ridiculous. It's so silly. You're a silly Billy, Mr.
The 4
Ingward.
kings slumber in the deepest chamber.
I'm sure
of
they
the
do.
ruins. Use this key to break the seal and open the floodgates. Oh,
Would you
and
like
do
a
not
balloon,
forget,
little boy?
The Darkwraiths reside in a dark void called the Abyss.
And also down there.
But the Abyss is no place for ordinary mortals. Although, long ago, the knight Artorias traversed.
It's kind of amazing
the
that if you
Abyss.
skip this
can find
dialogue,
him
you may have
and
no
learn
idea
from
what to do.
him, the Abyss may prove surmountable.
And it's also kind of... It is so weird that this location is also tied with Sif. Oh, it just boggles my mind how they designed it this way. Because you can't fight them unless you kill Sif, normally. Because of the randomization thing, I'm going to be able to take off Havels here in a bit. In which case my roll is probably going to turn the doo-doo. Yeah, it's going to turn the doo-doo whenever I actually have to fight them. But you have to kill him. But normally, it's one of those things you take for granted that once this is a common video game problem with people, that once you figure out something, you kind of forget that it was ever an issue. I was having this problem with Mario Odyssey yesterday. There's a part in the game where a bird takes your hat, and you have to get your hat back. And it gave me such a headache because your hat is constantly screaming because your head is alive in that game. And you get to this point where the solution, I'm not going to tell you what the solution is, but the solution involves, I can't even really describe it because that would be giving it away, and it's a new game, so I can't really do that. But the solution is a very specific one. But I was thinking, well, what do they want me to do? Do they want me to get an item and throw it at the bird? Do they want me to completely ignore this area and go to another area because the solution might be lateral and it might be over there? Is the solution a specific move that I have to do? Do I have to do it in a specific location? Do I have to outsmart the bird by causing it to do this? Like, it could have been anything, in theory. And eventually I had to look it up. And it turned out I was doing the thing that I needed to do, but I wasn't in a... Like, I was just barely off... Like, the 2 or 3 times that I tried it, I was just barely off the exact part that I needed to do it. And the physical location where you have to do it or whatever didn't physically look like that was a possible solution. Because there was no animation, and the physical design of the location did not correspond with the solution. So it didn't really make any sense. But for some people, I'm sure, I was even thinking about it whenever I was doing it, I thought, some people probably just did this instantly, like 1 minute. But for me, I just spent like 15 minutes just sitting there looking at it. And it's one of those video game things of some players, if the area is not particularly well designed to translate that knowledge, then some people might spend forever sitting there. And some people may not. Like, they might just instantly accidentally try that one move. Like, you walk up to, like, this spot right here, like, oh, well, obviously, I just need I'll just go through my moves, and I'll try my R1, I'll try my R2, and then the R2 works. But some people might try the R2, but they're, like, over here or something. And they'll say, oh, my R2 didn't work. And they'll just keep trying other things, and they will just so happen to not go across that particular sequence. And that's what I ended up doing. So a lot of players will say, well, that was super easy. You're an idiot for doing that. And they will remember that area as being poorly designed, whereas someone that didn't do that, and they just lucked out, and they just so happened to go through that area without any issues at all, will remember that area as being brain dead. Like, they had no problems whatsoever. Can't remember if there's any... Yeah, there is. And so they'll have this misconception that anyone that didn't do what they did is an idiot. And it's sort of that Sif problem, that Night Shield, that Artorias problem, of you might go through the Four Kings and you might skip that one bit of dialogue. And now, of course, everyone just knows. Well, you go kill Sif and you get the ring. You know, it's just basic knowledge because it's been such an old game and everyone knows by now. But remember what it was like the first time, and it's hard for me to. Oh, that's where the rest of Havel's stuff was. So he died in one part of the game and then died in another location. Good for him. Or maybe it was 2 different Havels. Yeah. Yes, more carvings that I don't have to use. I really wish this game had the Dark Souls 3 thing where you hit start and you just had quick select things. I do really like that addition. Anyways. But yeah, it's so weird that the solution to that, he says go find Artorias. But Artorias... This is where my bird watchers were. He was watching birds here. That the solution... Like, go find Artorias. Where's Artorias? Artorias is in the DLC that you can't even access until you place the Lord Vessel, but also there's the famous cinematic difference in which finding Artorias is a prerequisite to seeing something that requires not killing Sif in the first place. But killing Sif is actually the requirement for actually being able to defeat this area, even though you're not actually meeting Artorias and finding out information from him. And plus there's no lead-in description to tell you that Sif is related to Artorias at all, aside from Alvina. So it kind of just comes down to that. It's like, I don't really have a point here other than the entire sequence and design of Alvina and... Alvina and Sif and the DLC and the extra cinematic and Artorias and how to find him and Ingward's description of how to deal with this area is so involved and convoluted. So if another player told me I couldn't figure that out for hours, I would be like, yeah, I can see why. It makes perfect sense why someone would find that confusing. So, as simple as it sort of is, well, you just go kill Sif and get the ring, and then you're done. And the ring even tells you or whatever. It isn't a well-designed section, to be perfectly fair to people that are like that had problems, and maybe even forget to this day if they, are not as experienced as I or other people might be. I understand that perfectly. It makes perfect sense to me. So, no point behind that, I guess, other than, boy howdy, is Ingward saying, oh, just go find Artorias. Wow, does that not explain anything? It really doesn't explain a goddamn thing, if you really think about it. Oh, he's ready. He's ready. Come on, big boy. Oh, I'm glad that stuns him. Yeah. Now, how many of these things are going to be able to see me? Oh, Jesus! There was a phantom. That did kind of freak me out for a second, because he wasn't red. So I, momentarily got super confused. Ooh, that didn't feel good at all. Alright. Oh, man. Oh, you bastard. You didn't hit me. Oh, you fucking bastard. Hitting, holding a sword above my head. Hee, I hit you. I'm a cutie pie. That's my... I notice I love having enemies refer to themselves as cuties or cutie pies. Anytime I get angry at them for, exploiting the system, doing something that I imagine them, putting their hand, that expression where they put their fingers over their mouth, and they're like, hee hee? That? Really? Did you see me from over there? Come get me. Wedge yourself through this door, you fucking giant asshole. Dumb fucking piece of shit. I see you, motherfucker. I think you're gonna get me. God, he's loud, too. Is there one over here? I couldn't remember if there was a phantom here or not. Really? 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 Yes? Yes? Sir? Sir? Sir, can I help you? Sir? I don't think I can help him. Ma'am? Ma'am? You just stay there. You're hysterical. Ma'am. Please calm down. Okay. Anyways, getting off too many tangents. I actually, whenever I record, I wear headphones, but headphones that cancel out sound kind of fuck me up, because I can't hear myself really whenever I'm talking. So I always have to take one headphone off so I can actually hear around me, or else it gets really weird. So every so often I have to switch which one is covering which ear. Okay, anyway, sorry. The next topic of discussion, while I'm still sane, and thankfully it hasn't been too bad this episode. It's going to be bad once I go through here, though, so I'll start briefly. I wanted to go into the utility, talking about utilities, since we were talking about elemental versus utility and stuff. Whenever you were creating utility, because I know some people were actually... Sorry, I know this triggers people whenever I act like I'm going to do something like... Sorry. Some people were giving their own examples of utility, and I noticed in a lot of cases it was incorrect. Like, some people were saying, like, oh, you could have something that increases your attack speed. And that's not really utility. That's just another form of damage. I know it doesn't seem that way, but increasing your attack speed... It does change, sort of... Like, this is one of those weird little fringe sort of things, but it is sort of utility. It does change, like, physical things. It is altering gameplay to some extent, but when it comes down to it, altering how fast you're attacking is just... Unless it's like you have a poise system also, like that sort of changes. It's not great. It's not a good. It's like like I was using divine weapons. I don't have it equipped anymore. I was using divine weapons as an example, because that's the only example of a utility-based change to your weapons that exists in this game. So this, but it also is not a good example of this, because the only thing it does is just stop skeletons from reassembling in a sort of a scripted sequence. So people that were like, well, that's not a good example. I know, like, that's just the only example that's in this game. But attack speed is also sort of like that. It also is not a good example of that, because it has that sort of same fringe problem. Come on, someone, anyone. I know one of you is going to see me. Come on. There we go, okay. They do have line of sight. You have to be very, very specific. Since they have that thrusting attack, you have to be very specific about how do you lead with those, but attack speed really is just increasing damage is what it's doing. It is slightly more utility-based than just having an upgrade that's just, you do more damage versus this one enemy or versus all enemies or whatever. It is slightly better than that, but ultimately it is just a damage upgrade, is what it actually is. Really? Oh my... Yeah, I know you're a special princess. Oh my god, Christ almighty. Missed both of them. I was actually trying to do the input for a jumping attack and it didn't come out, so he just did the normal R2. Or she did the normal R2. Where did that other one come from? The other one shouldn't have been able to see me. Huh. It doesn't really matter, I guess. I do think that, thanks, that's my battery, by the way. Boom! That my fucking battery, every time it goes through a cycle, has to make that dumbass noise for God knows what reason. God, backtracking. I can't remember what the hell I was even saying now. I got so distracted with that. I'm thinking about how to go through the area now. Oh, I do think that there should have been a bonfire in New Londo. That's all I was gonna say. Rather than having to come back here every single time, there probably should have been. I don't know why they chose not to have one down there. It's kind of interesting in a way for there not to be one there, but there probably should have been one there. It's just not a particularly good decision on their part. This is one of those, I guess it's sort of a difficulty thing, where some people go, oh, you can't deal with it, baby. One of those things. No, I've completed the game many times not having a bonfire down here, and usually it's not that much of an issue. But there probably should have been one. There just should have been. It's not really an issue of difficulty. I think most people can probably agree with that. Although you can never really tell. Usually, often I'll think, well, that's probably a common complaint. And then there'll always be, like, at least, like, 2 or 3 people that have an opinion that I would interpret as being batshit crazy. Like, I hear it and I was like, really? That? You want that? And to me it sounds insane, but there's always going to be someone. I mean, it's good that people disagree about things. It'd be boring if every single human in the world agreed about every single thing. That would be bad. This is not a good decision that I'm making. Because everything's going to see me, and everything's going to be angry. Look at that. Look at that fucker down there. He's even using his goddamn shield. That ghost better... Okay, good. Let's try some shenanigans. This probably isn't going to work, but I want to try shenanigans. At least once. Okay, and it might give me time to think. Here you dickwad. I think that's him. It's really difficult to tell. I can't tell what I'm even aiming at. Ah, there is someone there. Doesn't even stagger from it. Wow. Okay, anyways. Back to my original thing. Utility. Divine weapons, attack speed, and everything, not good examples of utility. They just aren't. I don't blame you for thinking up ideas like that, but if it... A good rule of thumb is, if your idea translates into dealing more damage, then it's probably not a great idea. Not because damage is intrinsically wrong or anything, but because it's just kind of boring for this sort of design. Like, if you're the kind of person that just fucking loves, like, just stacking damage, and you love finding out ways of exploiting things like that, and coming up with different ways of creating even more damage multipliers or whatever, I can see the appeal in that. It has that sort of I'm breaking the game sort of component to it. So I understand that. There you go. I knew you were gonna cheat. Dickwad. Oh, fuck off! Fucking give me that! God damn! Fucking hate that shit in this game. They always get the fucking special treatment while I get shafted. That disappoints me. Go through the... I really wanted the feeling... Because if I time that any later, then you get hit and you deal damage. That's what's irritating me. It's sure, you can deal damage to them, but you'll take damage in the process because you dared to challenge them. That's what I just find irritating about that. Whoa, whoa, he opened it himself! Whoa! I want this move. Yes, thank you. I want to pancake you. I didn't know that they could open it themselves. That's so cool. I mean, it's horrible for me, but it's still pretty cool. Okay, sorry. But I wanted to start on that because I know, again, sure, if you like that, you like it. But we're talking specifically about the sort of utility that I've been talking about lately. So, if you're gonna throw a tantrum about, well, I like those things, that's fine, that's fine. You can waste your comment challenging me on that, even though I just said that it's fine. That I just don't prefer it and I want to talk about something else. Wow. So you can do it, that's fine. But we're talking about this. So I wanted to go over examples of this sort of thing that I'm talking about, how they might apply, so forth and so on. The sort of method to design that I have in mind whenever we're talking about these sort of things. And I wanted to explain this in a way in which I'm still coherent, which I can tell I'm starting to not be coherent because I'm getting too worked up as time goes on. But examples of utility that I'm sort of thinking about. I do this by first identifying the elements of combat, whatever combat your game has. And like in the case of Dark Souls, it's more sort of movement-based, animation-based, so they would be things like, the applications of it would be something like slowing enemies, stunning enemies, maybe turning enemies against one another, because aggro is a component of combat in Dark Souls, as far as enemies are concerned. And location, like your ability to translocate enemies, pushing, pulling them, making them be in one place or not be in a place, or so forth and so on. There's examples of that. God, I had to be so careful. The aggro mod really makes it so that you have to be super careful about every single thing that you do. Here we go. Like, you really need to know the standard. Imagine if the enemy placement also changed with the aggro mod. No. Then it would be like borderline impossible. I just want it. I want him to walk into my fucking R2. Stop RP walking, get over here. Alright, come on. Ah! Son of a bitch. Fine, be that way. Let's pancake you normally. I really wanted him to just walk into it. But it's so fucking specific. Oh well, anyways. I'm just wanting to enjoy myself in a specific way. I'm sure people are getting angry at me for doing that. God, what was I even talking about now? See, I'm getting that way. That's the reason why I need to get topics that actually require thought to be first, or else brain no work good. But those are the elements of utility in general Souls combat. Just things like that. So, something like combat speed, or attack speed, you can see why I don't consider that to be a super great idea. I wonder if I can hear. Great. That's what I need. Now, let's get you out of the way. This is the last one. Son of a bitch. Stop it. Okay. Oh, he was stuck. God, that does a shit ton of damage. I like my idea of what these things were before I realized. I can't even remember where they are otherwise. But they're in other places in the game. So describing them as being like amalgamations of the undead that is sort of fused into one another down here doesn't really work whenever they're just in other places for no goddamn reason. But they had to reuse enemies or whatever. Ooh, gosh. Again, I'm sorry for getting distracted. I have to deal with a lot whenever I'm doing these LPs, and I can hear footsteps of another Darkwraith. I can even hear it attacking. Oh, God fucking damn it. Oh, you just fucking give me this shit. Come around the corner. Maybe that's the solution. He'll probably hit me through the corner one way or the other. Fucking walk into... Oh, come on, walk into it. I want this. You're making me distracted because I want it so bad. I want it. I want R2. Oh, well. One day he'll run himself directly into that pancaking R2. I just want that experience because it's going to be so satisfying when he just... Oh, come on, please. Yes, yes, yes. See? I have to take damage in the process. Damn it. I'm sure you guys appreciate the fact that I'm so fixated on this. It's just something that it's my own small objective in combat that I want. I just get this way. Oh, jeez! What? Oh, Phantom. Of course, Phantom. A Phantom. No wonder. Wonder why the hell he was here. What an asshole place to put him, too. You. Now that one would have worked. It's hard to tell. Oh, yes! Just as he lowered the shield, that's what I wanted. Something like that. Oh, it feels super good. That's why I wanted to do it, for that surge of like, oh yeah, fuck you. That's what I wanted. Sorry. Okay, now we're done. Now we're done. Oh, that felt good. Sorry. All right. Utility. Sorry. Now I can concentrate. But those are examples, like slowing enemies, stunning them, disorienting them in some way, which is more. That's sort of the same thing as aggro, though. The ability to sort of disengage enemies is a category of that. And the ability to change their position and so on. Like, it's mainly positional and animation-based, is what I'm getting at. So that's what your utility is going to be centered around. So you can have things that alter the properties of your weapon in that way. Like, if you hit an enemy, you might slow down their animation speed, you might slow down, not their attack speed, but maybe their physical speed. Disorient them in some way. Maybe it stuns them, but deals less damage. Maybe you could have a property of your weapon actually be able to translocate enemies. Maybe you could do something like if you hit an enemy 5 times with a dagger that has this, and then you strike the wall or something, maybe it makes them like pop into the wall or like act as a portal or something. Like, I'm just thinking off the top of my head in regards to that. Like, you can do things like that. That would be an example of utility. Not that those are great examples, but that's just an example of that form of utility, in which you're actually taking the core mechanics of what composite your gameplay, and don't focus on the numbers, but focus on changing that, rather than, like, damage values or whatever it happens to be, or defensive values even. Here's one of those fuckers now. It's the same shitty baby one. Oh, I fucking hate you. Get over here. Stop hiding in the goddamn... Fucking hate this shit. This floating in midair, just firing that garbage at me. Haha, you can't hit me. This is that fucking cutie pie shit that I was talking about. Where they put their fingers over... fingers over their mouth. I'm a cutie. I'm being a little... People, like, whenever people, like, scream, "You're a cocksucker" over Xbox Live. That's the sort of... that's the response. Like, that's the emotional response that corresponds to that feeling. Okay, there we go. Grass Crest Shield. Yay, we finally got it. Good for us. That wasn't the Ember after all. Good for us. Alright, let's try to get back down to these other ghosts while that stupid transient curse is active. I could probably just roll off here. I'll take a little bit of damage, probably. Yeah, a little bit. Okay, those are examples of utility. You could also combine things. This is a different kind of utility, but you can also combine effects. Like we're in water right now. Something that already exists in Dark Souls is you gain additional damage if you hit someone with a lightning attack while they are standing in water. Which comes up so rarely that a lot of players don't even know that actually exists. And it also creates a local area of effects. Like, rather than just hitting that enemy, it'll create an even larger sort of circle around them that will affect other enemies that are nearby. So that is another example of a form of sort of utility that Dark Souls has. Why? Alright. So that could be slightly better. Like, that's not a perfect example of utility, but it is there. Just so happens to stop. Now I'm gonna be a cutie. No, come on! I'm gonna be this kind of cutie. That's old school cutie pie. You like that? No, ma'am. One of you fuckers will. Oh, yeah! Yeah, that's the stuff. Oh, you piece of shit. I hate that attack especially because it deals so much damage. If you get hit by the first part of it, really? If you get hit by the first... Come on, do your fucking garbage attack that doesn't work. Come on, man! Oh, dude, man! Freaking nature! I shouldn't be trying to enjoy the combat. I should actually just be combating. That's what I should be doing. Anyways, I should stop trying to enjoy myself. How dare I? I should be miserable. That's what you guys want anyways. But another example would be like that. Like throwing a water urn on someone. And it doesn't do anything. But then you hit them with lightning. And it again doesn't deal extra damage. Because that's not utility. Instead, you would have a stun effect. Where they would kind of be paralyzed for a brief moment or something. That's another thing that you could do. So, like for example, if you had a special ability, or a spell, or some sort of weapon art, or whatever, that actually gave them something like that. Like it made them wet, right? It made them wet, or it puts oil on them, or something. So that you could apply a fire attack, or a lightning attack, or something. An elemental-based thing that's on your weapon, or a utility-based thing that's on your weapon. And it creates that stun effect. Combining those two can actually give gameplay a little bit more depth. I'm sure people are throwing a fit about that. It's the same thing. It's not the same thing. Good God. But being able to combine elements like that, not elements, combine elements, like elements of combat is what I'm trying to say. But combine utilities like that, or whatever. Properties is the word that I'm looking for. Being able to combine properties like that can add depth to your gameplay without focusing on just raising damage values. Come on. Can he figure out how to get up here? Oh, he can. No, don't. Please, God, no. I just did that one accidentally. Just standard R1s. Let's just do standard R1s. Because that's what works. Come on. Oh, my stamina is fucking garbage. This one. No, come on. Fucking shield. trying to resist the urge to do an R2. I can't. Can I do it? Well, oh god, no. I hear the other one. Oh, he's coming. Oh no, Jesus. I don't like taking damage. I know I have more of a tanky build or whatever going on, but I really don't like even having to... Oh, Jesus Christ, that's a lot of damage. Just drink like a motherfucker, Frida. Drink up. Just get fucking wasted on that Estus. Come on. Alright. I'm trying to avoid doing that jumping attack. It works really well, but it's super dangerous. What I wouldn't give for some utility-based combat right about now. Fuck you! How did he get hyper armor off that? Too bad for you, my fucking self-humanity is locked, because I'm cheating. Dickwad. Cannot believe that. He got hyper armor off that attack. He didn't even have his fucking shield up. He's like, no, I'm gonna steal this shit. It's mine! I'm a god! Yeah, you're a god. You're a dead god. Oh, that's so annoying. Oh, that's the shit that makes me lose track of what I'm saying. Sorry again. But combining effects like that, that's interesting. Or maybe you could have a utility-based thing on your weapon that whenever you hit an enemy, it applies like some sort of, I don't know, like a gravitational or magnetic state to them that doesn't do anything until you hit another enemy. And then whenever you do that, both of those enemies either get slowed down or they get pulled to one another. Like it makes it so that they can't move as well. Or if they're moving directly towards you and they funnel together, they sort of get stuck together and that makes them get stunned or something like that. Just things that are like that. Or you hit an enemy and when it dies, its corpse turns into like a mine or some sort of like teleportation thing that makes it so that enemies like vanish for a split second. And they'll come back like 5 seconds later, which could be very useful in the midst of combat. And these are like not major changes, but you can see what I'm getting at. I would like the ability to put stuff like that on my weapon that makes, and it has one slot. Don't do this thing again where, well, you want to have shit tons of, you wouldn't, obviously. Like you do one thing and you do it well, maybe you have it on like another weapon, but you only have 2 weapon slots or whatever the balance is. I'll think of the balance for yourself. Like, just work with me here. And, so that whenever you do things like that, you can customize your weapon so that it actually alters, like, how combat plays out. In something that's more interesting than just, well, I'm dealing more damage, or this ice enemy is taking extra damage, or my fire attack doesn't work against fire enemies. Come on, man! What is the range on this? It is so frustrating. Maybe I should have switched. I don't want to switch to a fucking spear. Oh, that is so frustrating. Dark Souls in general, Dark Souls 1 has that problem with a lot of weapons, where the range on a lot of weapon types is just fucking garbage. Like, it's really bad. I guess that's one of the reasons why they have so much Estus, and I talked about that last time. They have this mentality that most of it is just going to be tanking through damage. What? There wasn't even anything there. What is going on? Alright, come on. There's one just walking around up there. But anyways, that's the general gist of what I'm thinking about whenever I talk about utility and customization of weapons and spells, in this case. Remember I was going to talk about magic during the last time? I'm glad I've gotten to it now, because my mind could not take this any longer. And I'm probably not going to be able to discuss this the way that I wanted to. But magic in Dark Souls, like I even have some now. Like magic in Dark Souls, whoa, woo, whoa, 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 wow, wow, wow. You guys like that noise, anyways. You love it. Magic is like this. And that's what it is. That's it. That's the example of what magic is like. There's nothing particularly special about it. It's just... It is a hitbox that you put in front of yourself. This is like the case with almost all magic in the game, almost. And it just deals damage, and that's what magic is. And that's pretty much it. That's why I like the idea of things like Cast Light, or the Repair spell, or things like that. There's not much of a chance to actually use them in many cases, but I do like that they exist. And I wish spells were more sort of like that. And in the case of a lot of these things, they, like in the case of Cast Light, you're not going to use Cast Light over an actual spell. You're just not. And I would love to be able to use it, like, really, I could use it right now. I don't think I have it on hand. No, that's what it was. It has an intelligence requirement. That's another thing. The utility-based spells in this game, their requirements are too high, despite the fact that they don't really even do anything. They don't have many applications. There's no sense in that. But I really... It's so frustrating the way that some things in this game are designed sometimes. That could have been so much better. And I can see you up there, you dumb ghost. Okay, my transient curse isn't worn out just yet. Here's another... Has he not? Okay. I couldn't remember if there was another phantom up here or not, so I'm having to concentrate a little bit. This is going to be another thing where I probably die a million times to the boss. But we're here. We're here. This point being. Next time we might have to actually skip a bunch of shit. But magic in general, it's frustrating the way that magic is designed because of things like intelligence or faith requirements for things that don't deserve to have them in the first place. So things like Cast Light are locked behind. They have such high... Like, they're not super high, but they're high enough that you're not going to waste points getting your intelligence high enough to use Cast Light, of all things. Do I even have it? I don't know why I'm talking about not actually going in and looking at things. Like Hush is a great example. Has a requirement of 15. For no reason. Remedy, 16. I don't have Cast Light on me. I have to buy that, I guess. Yeah, I never bought it. And there's not too many other examples of pure utility-based weapons. Emit Force sort of is like that. And it has a requirement of 18, but you get what I'm coming from. So you can't use them on things that should be utility-based. Like, it would be nice to run around with Freelid here and just have Cast Light. Just have it. Because that, to me, I love things like that. Where you have a character that is pure damage, but they have, like, one or two little tricks. And they're not even damage-based tricks. They're just like, oh, I can just make a light above my head, and it helps me see. Or I can make my footsteps not have sound anymore, or whatever. And there's just one or two little things that you can do, but they only have one slot to work with. So as a result, it's just like one kind of cute trick that you can add to your build. One cute trick to make these ghosts super angry. And that's all it is. I know I don't have the ring equipped right now. I really like that idea, but Dark Souls does not. It's obsessed with making you dump huge amounts of souls into things to be able to get things to work like that. So, magic and souls, not particularly great. All the spells are just hitboxes you throw at things, or you put directly in front of you, and they just deal damage. Like, it's incredibly simplistic, very kind of dumb, and the logic of how magic is implemented in Souls games is just, it has casting time, so you might cast it too soon. Like, with this R2 thing I was having a problem with. That's how Souls is designed. Like, the movements or animations are supposed to be slow, so that you actually have to learn their timing, and sometimes enemies have their own timing that makes it so that if they run up to you, your short-range hitbox attack just will not hit them. So, well, as much as I enjoy the idea of Darkwraith walking into my pancaking R2, it just doesn't happen, because that's not how our animations sync up, and that's just part of the gameplay, obviously. And magic works the same way, in which the magic, like you cast your soul arrow or something, and you can do it X amount of times, and that's it. And sure, you can do that, but your soul arrow might miss them completely if they're running side to side because they're trying to navigate around something or whatever. And it works that way in PvP. That's the logic behind it. Like, you can dodge everything, blah, 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 blah. You know these things. Okay, hold on. My notepad was slightly out of range. No, don't tab over that. Come on. Make sure that's... Okay, that's fine. I'm trying to get this out before I get enraged with Four Kings, sorry. So whenever I talk about magic, I'm not going to be talking about PvP, because that's a whole other layer of bullshit that you have to deal with. So if you get angry that I suggest something, it's like, well, that wouldn't work out, another player, blah, blah, blah. I'm not thinking about it right now. Like, that's another discussion. I'm just thinking about actual gameplay, rather than trying to turn Dark Souls or any other Souls-type formatted game into a PvP fest. But I was thinking about implementation of magic and how to alter it. I would like spells... You might say this might turn the game into not being a Souls game. That's fine. Again, I've mentioned this before. It doesn't have to... I'm not modifying Souls. I'm thinking about a new game that sort of learns from the mistakes that Souls has made. Or you may not consider them mistakes, but I do. Just calm down. I'm not... No, I can't sidetrack myself. Sorry. But I was thinking about that. About how to change it. And I think I would like the game to be more about that. Spells, instead of just being damage focused, they can still deal damage, obviously. But are more about movement, like you moving, or moving other enemies. Placement, like your placement and enemy placement. And also that combining thing I was talking about, where you're combining different strategies. So I wanted to give some examples of that. How did I move it and not move it far enough? I can't even read my own writing. But I was thinking the idea of like placing traps, for example. I know this is a thing in The Witcher. It was apparently a really big thing in The Witcher 2, where it had that no iframe problem, so everyone just exploited traps constantly. Traps are fine. I do like them, but they are utility based in that way. So they are nice. I appreciate traps more than I appreciate a giant storm that you make on top of enemies, where you just stand 50 feet away from them, target them, press a button, and receive damage and they die. But you can only use it 5 times or whatever. My idea would be, if you're a magic user, you can cast magic indefinitely, but they just have cooldowns, or you have to build up more resources, whether it's MP or whatever. I'm just thinking out loud, to where you actually have to build a resource in order to be able to use it in the first place. But in general, it's just easier to use magic, but there's a cooldown, so you can't just spam magic arrow 50 times in a row. And in my perfect world, there would not be a magic arrow. So traps would be a simple example. And you could change traps so that they don't just deal damage. Like they just walk on top of a lightning track and they trap and they get stunned and take damage or whatever. But you could also make traps that you could like put on a wall. Like you put a trap right here, and then you're standing up here, and you lure the enemy over here. And the trap doesn't do anything except for like do a force push, like an emit force, and it pushes them off the edge. And it kills them that way. Like, I would appreciate magic that's like that. Or you could have another spell that is like a portal. Like, you could do the same thing of you put a portal here, and then you put another portal up there. But there's a limit to the range at which you can make 2 of them. And if you interact with the one that's here, then you will appear back up there, or you could be enemy-based. Like, you could target the roof, like right here, and put a portal there, and put another one down here. So an enemy walks across it, and they get sucked in, and then they fall through, and they fall into a pit. That sort of thing. And it rewards, like, just knowing the map, and that sort of the gist of things. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this out as fast as possible. My mind is still working. You could also have something that is like you have a basic spell that is sort of like Magic Arrow, in the sense that it is a basic sort of bitch move that barely deals any damage, but it does have a status effect that it applies to things. And I don't know what to call this status effect. I was just referring to it as a fog in my notes. But you apply it to someone, and they sort of gather this ether around themselves, around enemies. And the more that you cast it on them, the more that it builds up, and it builds up this status. And once the status maxes out, it doesn't do anything. Like, the status itself doesn't do anything. But you have other spells Like, say, my Black Flame here is my sort of basic bitch spell. And we'll say that it reaches longer than it actually does here, because this is just combustion. And I'm hitting an enemy, and it builds up this resource on them from long range. And it may not track like Soul Arrow, just imagine however you want it to be. And then I switch to my other weapon, or my other spell. And it has a property that it doesn't have any status like the other one does. And it deals sort of moderate damage. But if an enemy has that status on them, it creates like an explosion, or it stuns them, or something, depending on how much is built up on them. And it has sort of that scaling to it, so that it encourages interacting spells with one another, that sort of thing. Or maybe there was another magic spell that's sort of a rush spell, where you, like, rush forward. It's not a roll, but I'm just trying to demonstrate. And you cast it, and you go way forward very quickly. Sort of like a sword rush attack on a fighter in Dragon's Dogma or something. And it makes an ice, like, sort of slide. Like you slide forward on ice or something. And it creates that sort of ice trail behind you. And enemies that walk across it might get frozen onto it, or they might slip on it, or they might just slow down, or something like whatever the game engine allows. Or you can have another magic spell that again doesn't deal any damage, but creates a wall in front of you that enemies can't get around, so that you could use it to block enemies in or trap them in things. Or even if you put it under them, it launches them into the air, or things like that. Just various things like that. And combining spells so that they have status effects that don't do anything on their own, but whenever you combine them with other abilities, they do trigger those effects. An example I wrote down might be, maybe you have 3 different spells. One of them is an AoE attack that you can place from range that deals no damage. Like, it would have to have sort of a Dragon's Dogma targeting system. It wouldn't work in Souls games, really. That you place as a circle, and it doesn't deal any damage, but it's sort of like a quake. It's like an earth spell. And it makes them sort of slow down or kind of tremble, and they're kind of briefly stunned, and it lasts like 2 seconds or something. And then you have another spell that isn't really related to that one, but it allows you to... It's sort of like that ice spell, or it's a fire spell where you rush forward and it leaves a trail of flames behind you that does create damage, that sort of thing. But it allows you, more importantly, to target an enemy and rush into the middle of that AoE that you placed. And then once that has been applied, and you rush forward and you using an enemy, and you rush to that enemy, you kill them or whatever, but you're in the middle of it now. And you have a third spell that... I can't demonstrate this in any way. But you have a third spell that whenever you use it, it creates a huge amount of damage in an AoE around you, only around you. You can't target it. But it only affects enemies that have been knocked down. And there are many different abilities in the game that can knock things down, or weapons in the game that can knock enemies down, and specific attacks that can knock enemies down. So you can combine all 3 of those to create sort of a build in which you first stun the enemies, rush into the middle of them, do a little bit of damage, but then do a huge amount of damage in an AoE around you, so that things are actually combining in interesting ways. That's what I mean when I'm talking about incorporating utility into Souls gameplay. Now, some of you might get angry, oh, that sounds like an MMO, or it's... I don't care what it is, but you get what I'm saying. Whatever counter arguments you want to make, go ahead and make it. I don't care. Well, that wouldn't beat Souls, or what. I don't mind. Just whatever. I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood what I'm coming from in relationship to that. That's what I'm talking about whenever I'm talking about utility, applying utility to spells and weapons in Souls games. That's what I would want to see. Just more interesting variety and how attacks are being applied. Okay. Oh, please don't do that. Now, the 4 Kings, I don't know how this is going to work out. They're already... Oh, that's not too bad, I guess. They're already sort of... I know people get angry at referring to the 4 Kings as a DPS race, but it really is. Jesus, they do a lot of damage. I was trying to get far enough away to be able to heal. You can see that one was barely taking... Like, he had a very large health bar. But it's kind of weird that that was really bizarre. The boss itself seemed to have a fairly normal health bar, I think, but the individual enemies, the four kings themselves, seem to have a much inflated health bar. Super weird. Maybe I should use a different kind of weapon for this. Super interesting, though. I'll try a different weapon. We'll do more run, and then I'll probably die to that, and I'll have to do the same thing that I did with this episode with Nito. I'm not sure what I'm going to use, though. I better get out of here. I'm sure that there's fucking hollows chasing me right now. I thought I set this back up last time. Maybe I didn't. Okay, we'll try a different weapon, and then we'll go from here. I'm exhausted now. I'm exhausted mainly just because I had to concentrate so hard to try to maintain my mental state to be able to talk about something even remotely intelligently. Because doing this aggression mod, it exhausts you mentally. Because you're just constantly having to focus on so many things. And trying to talk about something that complicated at the same time is mentally exhausting. Okay, let's just try something else. There's like one or two other things that I can talk about today. You know what, let's try a fucking washing pole, why not? What if that... Nah, it doesn't help me with my roll. Oh well. I think next time what I'm actually gonna do, I'll cheat my intelligence up just so that I can use those utility-based things that I was talking about. Because I would like to have the ability to just use Cast Light just to have it there. I'll probably forget to use it. And unfortunately, you still have to increase your weight to be able to use, like, staves and stuff to be able to cast magic in the first place, but maybe it's something I could try to do to alleviate my insanity. It won't work, but I can try. Oh, and now I have to run. I have to run over there. I can't afford to try to clear out these guys every time. So I'm actually going to have to try to run past everything. I don't know if I can do this. I'm just really exhausted right now. There were a few other things I wanted to talk about. Sort of briefly, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it out of me, though. A lot of it related to stuff that you guys were talking about last time. Please, go away. They're going to attack me through the fog as I go through. Okay, good. I just have to get away from the ghosts. You can sort of try to fall straight down the stairs to avoid this entirely, but you will often clip on these little things that are hanging out right here, and that will kill you, so you kind of have to avoid it. But Gibbles said, well, I didn't write it down, I put it in parentheses, but he basically explained how Monster Hunter tail cuts actually work mechanically. And in the last episode, I was just fucking angry, I was just talking. I wasn't talking specifically about Monster Hunter in many cases. I just knew that things happened in the game like that. I'm not an expert on Monster Hunter anyways. But he was talking about it mechanically. And specifically, I wanted to talk about targeting body parts to disable them. I like that. I actually do really like that. And that also existed in Vagrant Story, to use that as an example yet again. In Vagrant Story, you could attack head, arms, chest, or legs. And there was a targeting system in that game, and it was sort of awkward. And it didn't work perfectly, because many enemies died way before... Like, you could attack a guy's legs, and it would take forever to actually disable his legs. So he would die way before you ever saw any benefit from it in many cases. So often it would only work against really big enemies, or enemies that had huge amounts of health, or if you're doing something like I was talking about earlier with my first run of the game, where you had a weapon that had not built up an affinity, and you were kind of just being dumb about it, you could do that, where you just attack someone a shit amount of times with a cruddy weapon, and just disable them that way. You could do that too, I guess. But it was super awkward, it didn't work super well. But I love the idea of attacking things and disabling them. Like, mech games are like that too, where you attack their legs, and it disables their legs so they have to limp. I love stuff like that. That's utility-based. I love that. That's lots of fun. But whenever you start hiding things like treasures inside of enemies, and you're not allowed to obtain them unless you specifically do that or whatever. That's the thing I have. Really? That's the thing I have a problem with. and I think someone else mentions, Alan Sherrill says, regarding tail cutting, I'm never sure why they can't just cut the tail off after it's dead. I agree. I'm gonna die from this. I agree. I would be perfectly fine with the Dark Souls tail cutting if you just got the weapon afterwards. Like, they're dead, how come you can't just walk over? God, will you stop attacking, please? Oh, it just deals so much damage. And now another one's gonna show up. The AoE range on that's way too high, by the way. Yeah, see? Oh god, not that. You can't even avoid that one. It just tracks you and... Oh god, come on! Well, look at it, it's way too big. I'm sure there's always going to be that one guy. So, well, I didn't have any trouble before Kings. Yeah, I know. That's the thing I was talking about earlier, where some people have issues with one thing and other people don't have any issues with another thing. God, look how much health he has. Yeah, there's no way. They have way too much health. You know, I take back what I said about their health. The individual and the health, the main health bar is also extremely high. Yeah, there's no way. Like, I'm gonna have to really jank things up. They have a huge amount because they're all the aggression amount of the Gravelord and etc. and so forth. Yeah, they have a monstrous amount of health. And they're dealing huge amounts of damage. There's no way that I can get through this. I would have to. This would have to be like a 30 or 40 minute long fight of just perfect dodges. Plus, they keep respawning. Like that. Like, I ran as fast as I possibly could, but... Oh, man. I finally got one of them. And some people don't know this. I think I mentioned them in my prior playthrough, but they do respawn indefinitely. It says 4 kings because that's intended to be how many... That's intended to be how many you end up encountering. But you do, Well, look at that. The AoE's just too big. Well, that would be present even in the base game. I've always thought that. The AoE attack is just way too large. The second that you actually see it, even if you turn around and start running immediately, if you were in the process of attacking them, you just take damage, and there's nothing you can actually do about it. Alright, let me get this last few thoughts out, then we'll stop, and I'll have to finish that next time. But I do really like the idea of targeting things to disable them. In a Monster Hunter, I do know it works that way. I was just fucking angry last time, so I was taking out on poor Monster Hunter. But I do know how that's how it generally works. Monster Hunter, it's more about targeting things to disable certain parts of their body so they can't use specific animations anymore, and so that's good. That is good. And in Dark Souls, the animations and so forth do not support that sort of system, and that's more of the problem. That's more directly what the problem is. The fact that Dark Souls is not made for the things that it wants to use, because FromSoft typically doesn't really think about things like that. Actually, really, I'll do one more little dumb run, and I won't succeed, but I have to... Hold on, I'll just sit that way if I go. I have to raise my stats anyways if I want to do that cast light and everything stuff. I'll just raise my faith and intelligence all the way up anyways. They don't scale with anything I'm using, so it doesn't matter. Not that I really care about not cheating in the first place. It does sort of amuse me that I'm at level 300 and something, but nothing's really that different. Because once you get past 40 or 50... you gain so little that, sure, you're at level 1 billion, but your stats are more or less the same. Like, there's really not that much of a difference, to be honest. Really, mainly, it's just endurance is the main thing, which is capped out, to be fair. But I'm not really exploiting it that much as I could have. Be good hood. Yeah, you can see where my mind is right now. But yeah, I really do like that. Being able to target specific body parts and that disables animations and... like lowers walk speed or attack speed and stuff like that. I do appreciate that. I do think that's a good idea. It's just that in Souls games, it's so poorly implemented, which is not a secret to anyone. I'm sure Monster Hunter, it's just fine. I wonder if he'll open the door again. Ah! Man, I think the main thing with the Four Kings stuff is that I'm just taking so much damage. You know what? I'll be a cutie pie myself and use Power Within this time if I can think about it. I might just die here, just trying to get past these dudes. My voice really is starting to go. Anyways, yeah, I just wanted to get off the topic of tail cutting. It was never an important talking point in the first place, and I feel like it's been weighed down because too many people got angry about Monster Hunter for whatever reason. Anyways, targeting specific body parts is something that I actually was in my original design doc for the thing that I was working on. But the more I've thought about it, the more I kind of decided against it. And that's what I actually wanted to talk about, really, with my last part when I was trying to talk about the idea of incorporating weapon customizations with abilities that have cooldowns and things like that. It'd be like, instead of your R1 and R2 always being the same thing and it corresponding with your weapon, you could have it correspond with different kinds of weapons, but you might have several different abilities that you could slot that work with either katanas or longswords or whatever, but more specifically, they are abilities, like, you're equipping abilities that change the properties of how you attack. And you could have abilities that do things like that. That this ability targets heads. And then you could go into your menu and change your ability for your primary R1. And it would look the same, but it might be slightly different or whatever. I don't care. But it would do something like, instead, this ability now targets legs. So that you don't have to worry about having a lock-on system in your game that, in addition to being able to switch between... Because that's been a problem with Dark Souls. Like, you can target one enemy, but you can't support, like, targeting heads or anything. Because if every enemy had specific nodes for head, legs, arms, chest, and then there were also, like, 5 enemies on the screen at the same time, oh, it would be a mess trying to target all of them, right? So you can fix that by actually doing that. By having that customization with abilities or weapon customization, however you want to handle it. To have it so that your primary attack either targets the head natively, or targets legs specifically, or targets arms specifically. So that you can customize your build so that you specifically want to slow enemies down. So that whenever you hit that enemy, it does target their legs. But it looks exactly the same, so you don't have to worry about animations, creating new ones. So that it specifically targets their legs or their arms or whatever, and it applies that without actually having to target it manually. So that just your customization is the thing that's actually dealing with it. That's a way of dealing with that as well. Okay, well, oh yeah. We'll do one more of these. I'll use Power Within. Even though this is a terrible idea, because I'm already having huge amounts of problems with damage. Taking damage, more specifically. But I'll do it just for the hell of it. We'll see what happens. Late roll, fantastic me. I have troubles concentrating. And no talk good. Oh man, my rolls are this shit right now too. You can really tell I'm just completely... I'm always so fucking drained and out of it by the time that I'm finally... God, yeah. The hitboxes on these guys isn't great. Like, you could tell right then, I actually dodged correctly. But I think the hitbox of his weapon is also sort of part of his arm as well. So even though I rolled behind him once my iframes ended, I was actually still inside of his weapon hitbox, even though I dodged correctly. It's just one of those things, just... There are too many things in Souls games that are not well designed to be able to support. 3 is a little bit better because it concentrated so heavily on it sometimes. Like, some of them are really bad. But there are examples of, like, doing animations of you lying down and enemies going over your head and shit like that. It's actually kind of interesting. Okay, oh gosh, I'm just completely gone at this point. Yeah, there are too many things in Souls games don't really support the sort of things that we're talking about. So whenever you have counterclaims of, well, that wouldn't work in a Souls game, it obviously wouldn't, not the way that FromSoft designs them. So whenever you're talking about design within Souls, you really have to learn from their mistakes and make a game that can support those things, and Dark Souls mechanically, like in the context of a lot of these spell ideas that I was talking about, or the context of that targeting thing I was talking about just now, you can't really do that in Dark Souls 1, 2, or 3 because of the way that physics work, the way that the mechanics work, the way that just the game engine can either support it or not support it. Like even things like the portal thing. The portal thing sounds simple on paper, but actually I know incorporating something like that is incredibly complicated, which is why people don't usually do them. And that's why in games like these, elemental things do exist. Because they're very, very easy to incorporate into a game. Because the only thing you have to worry about is just this model applies this number, and this model applies this number. And you don't have to change absolutely anything about the gameplay. It's a very easy, lazy way of incorporating a little bit more depth into your game whenever you just don't have the time, resources, or maybe even the patience or imperative to be able to apply it in the first place. So that's why things like that exist. So I understand why they exist. I just wish that they would be more aggressive about changing them and making the gameplay a little bit more interesting. Because the only other way that you can make the gameplay interesting for a system that still utilizes magic like this is something like Dragon's Dogma, where your spells are still just giant hitboxes that you throw at an enemy and it just applies a number. But in a game like that, they're basically glorified .mov files where you just watch and marvel at how magnificent they look. Dragon's Dogma is a lot like that. The magic in Dragon's... People compliment Dragon's Dogma's magic, but the magic in that game also sucks from a utility and design standpoint. But it looks impressive. Like, it's marvelous to behold. So if you're going to have a system that is like Dark Souls that has generic magic, at least do it like Dragon's Dogma, where it's actually visually enthralling to look at. But anyways, next time... I know that wasn't too bad. Maybe I'll do better next time if I'm actually able to have my brain work good. I'm just gone right. I'm too gone right now, so I can't roll correctly, and my timing is just garbage. Maybe I can use Power Within and use a few other things. Maybe I can use like an enchantment, or I can actually buff a normal weapon and do it that way. So we'll see. We'll see. Next time I'll fight 4 kings, and we'll see what happens with that. You guys leave your comments below on what you think of my ideas and suggestion, how angry you are that I said a thing I didn't say, or maybe I did say and I forgot about it, or whatever it is. You guys have fun. The most important thing is not for me to be right, it's for you guys to think about things in relation to design. And just try to think about things more objectively, which, if you can do that better than I can, then more power to you. Like, I don't mind that. As long as you guys are actually improving and being better people as a result of my content, then I'm fine with it. Like, whether it's my art gripes or whether it's LP, I try really hard to make sure that I'm communicating things in an intelligent way that's focusing more on design and explaining things and trying to get you guys to think rather than just creating the entertaining content of me dying over and over and over again. So anyways, I hope you guys appreciate everything, but I'll try to pump another one of these out soon. I've got another, well, that'll come out before then, so don't worry about it. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed yourself. Freelid, sweetie, you've been through a lot. We both have. But maybe we'll be better next time. The later half of this Souls game is not great, especially with all these mods running. We'll power through it somehow. I'll see you guys next time. So long. Oh.